Joel, when we talked about the Psalms of Complaint, we commented that they give you a certain insight into the human condition, certain view of the human condition.
Generally a view of the human condition as nasty, brutish, and short.
Yes.
Right? The predominance of Psalms of Complaint, and even, in fact, the number of Psalms of Thanksgiving that seem to assume that things had been bad beforehand. We really get the sense that they were in a constant state of despair and unhappiness. All this talk about surrounded by enemies and in the depths, and these generally presume that human life is difficult. And surely it was more difficult then than it is for us now. But one of the reasons I think that the Psalms have been so generally beloved, it has to do with this, has to do with the fact that it's an expression of what I think people see as sort of a common despair over the lack of control we have over our lives.
Yeah, and that it speaks to something that is pretty much universal.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a nice short example of one here, Psalm 130. Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. Lord, hear my voice. Let your ear be attentive to the voice of my supplication. I wait for you, O Lord. My soul waits, and in his word I hope. My soul waits for the Lord more than those who watch for the morning, more than those who watch for the morning. And then, O Israel, hope in the Lord. But what comes across from that?
Yes, there is some sort of... all the language of I wait, I hope, right? All comes from a place of fear or of despair or of the sense of lacking the attentiveness that the speaker desires from God. Right? The speaker is clearly not getting what he expects or needs, and so all I can do is wait and hope. Right? I have no control. Right? I have the lack of control over life, and of course this makes sense. This is a context where, famously, things like the weather and agriculture, right, the very basis of their livelihoods.
Not to mention things like infant mortality and short life expectation.
All of this was something that was, since it was so out of their control and they had no other way of explaining, right, why these things should happen to them, all I can do is wait and hope.
Here's a nice summary description of the human condition from Psalm 144. O Lord, what are human beings that you regard them, or mortals that you think of them? They're like a breath. Their days are like a passing shadow.
Yeah.
Doesn't give you much to look forward to.
No, but it does again. It recognizes just the absolute lack of control.
Yeah. The Sheol, the netherworld, looms very large in these Psalms.
Regular references to being in the pit, which is often a translation of Sheol.
Yeah.
Being in, in the deep, in the netherworld, down below. I think, of course, the important thing is to recognize that Sheol is not what we would consider hell.
True. It's not a place of punishment. In fact, the assumption is everybody is going there.
Everybody is going there. So you think of Jacob back in Genesis when he's concerned that he's having already lost Joseph, that Benjamin will be taken from him also. And he says, "Don't let my gray head go down to Sheol in sorrow." But the notion is he's going there anyway, but he'd like it to be in a better frame of mind, without it being a despairing descent.
What is it like in Sheol? Ever been there?
It's like an unfinished basement, I suppose.
And in a damp climate.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It is, as far as the vague descriptions we get, it's dark, it's damp. Yes. There's not what it is it's very difficult for sound to get out of it, right? But you have calling from the depths. Is the assumption is you can't hear me,
Yeah.
right? That it's like a black hole almost.
That you're way down. It's a second basement or something, and not insulated.
Right.
Yeah. And this is Psalm 115. The dead do not praise the Lord, nor do any that go down into silence. And that's something that comes up a number of times. And it's often brought up as an argument as to why God shouldn't send somebody down there, at least just yet. Because if I go down there, I can't even praise you.
Yeah. Yeah, again, there's this notion of it being, it's just there, and yet it is so completely removed. There are some fun ancient Jewish traditions about the people descending to Sheol, and a certain groups who sort of stand in a heightened area, but still in Sheol, and attempt to sing psalms. The psalms that are attributed to the sons of Korach. There are a few of them in the Psalter.
Yeah.
And of course, in the book of Numbers, the sons of Korach are all swallowed up by Sheol,
Yeah.
and they're taken down. And so how do we reconcile these things? Well, they must be standing on a platform in Sheol where they can do this. But you see in those traditions, right, the tension between praising God from the depths and the absolute silence that reigns there.
Now, there are a few psalms that hint at the possibility, or seem to entertain the possibility that perhaps some exceptions could be made. Now, my favorite one of these, I think, is Psalm 49. And it's, why should I fear in time of trouble when the iniquity of my persecutor surrounds me? Because there is those who trust in their wealth and boast in the abundance of their riches. Truly no ransom avails for one's life. There is no price one can give to God for it. When we look at the wise, they die. Fool and dole perish together and leave their wealth to others. Their graves are their homes forever, their dwelling places to all generations. Mortals cannot abide in their pomp. They are like animals that perish, like sheep appointed for Sheol. But God will ransom my soul from the power of Sheol, for he will receive me. I often think of this in relation to what the tenure process used to be like at Yale, that people would say, nobody gets tenure here. But I will. Right. It's the eternal optimism of the human being that somehow or other an exception will be made for me.
But as is always the case, the exceptions prove the rule, as it were. That is, I may be ransomed, but everybody else, right? There's a constant understanding. And I think what we said about royal ideology when we talked about royal psalms is true about these to an extent as well. That is, the psalms give us, I think, our best glimpse into how ancient Israelites understood death. Right? Again, people die obviously all the time in the Bible, but here we get insight into how they imagined that to actually look. And again, right, it's not really the way that anybody thinks about it anymore, which I think makes it interesting to think about.
Yeah. Do you think that they believed really that exceptions could be made? No,
I don't really see any evidence for it. Right.
Definitely a one-off.
Right. Elijah or Enoch. Right.
Yes.
The ones who went up. But again, the fact that everybody, even the patriarchs, all the kings, right? They're all gathered to their ancestors.
Yeah.
There's no notion that they are somehow even God's, right? As we said, God's own begotten son, right? The kings. They are down there with everybody else.
It's one of the Psalms, says 20 or 21, says that of the king, you have given him length of days forever and ever. And some people have read this as meaning that the king could hope to live forever, I presume in the hereafter. But its length of days,
Yeah.
you know, whether in fact it meant that is still very open to question. This is one now that's used in the New Testament, actually used as an argument for believing in the resurrection of Jesus. In Psalm 16, therefore my heart is glad and my soul rejoices. My body also rests secure, for you did not give me up to Sheol or let your faithful ones see the pit.
Yet.
I
think that's the word. The word that's missing is yet. Right. Again, so many of the, right, what you see, and it's almost ironic, right? The notion that nobody in Sheol can communicate with the deity, and yet these speakers in the Psalms sort of put themselves as if they are in Sheol, calling to be removed from it, or hoping not to go down to it. In all of them, I think the notion is, I metaphorically imagine that this is what Sheol must be like because you are not answering me, right? Because I am in this state of despair, you are not answering me. This must be what Sheol is like, where my prayers can't reach you. So I'd like to not be in that position yet, please. I realize it's coming someday, but until that day, treat me as one of the living who can address you and call on you.
You know, Psalm 16 seems to me to be the kind of psalm that one might recite if you had a serious illness and recovered. Mm-hmm. And then you can say, thank God you did not let me go down to the pit.
Yeah.
But it doesn't at all imply that God won't let you go down to the pit eventually.
Everybody ends up there.
Yeah. One of the probably favorite psalms in the whole collection, Psalm 23. Mm-hmm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures, etc., etc. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. What's he so comforted about? Does he really think that the shadow of death will not eventually get him?
Eventually. Still, yeah. I think, again, the notion is not yet. Right? There's language here of God protecting, right?
Yeah.
Shielding by day and by night. In this psalm, right, that sort of notion of hope and trust, again, I think we've talked about this sort of buttering up God a little, right? I have faith, God, that you will protect me. Right? So even though I'm going through a tough time, I'm sure you will take care of me while I do. Obviously, this is a psalm that because it is particularly beautiful, I think we can agree. Yeah. It obviously is one of the best known. It's recited liturgically, certainly at every Jewish funeral. This is one that the whole attending body says together. It's a recognition in that context, at least, that everybody dies, but I haven't yet.
Yes, there's also, I think, maybe in that psalm and in a few others, a sense of trust in God that things will be for the best. Mm-hmm. And, shall we say, finessing the question of what happens eventually. Another one is Psalm 63. You are my God, I seek you, my soul thirsts for you. I have looked upon you in the sanctuary, beholding your power and your glory. So I will bless you as long as I live. But again, I don't think there's any implication that this is going to last forever. But it's the sense that I will trust in the Lord anyway.
Yeah.
And the things will be for the best.
Right. As I've said a few times, so many of the Psalms of all sorts of varieties, whether it's a psalm of hope and trust or an explicitly a psalm of complaint or lament, so many of them, in terms of how they understand the human condition, understand it as simply sort of being blown like chaff, right? There is some sort of plan one has to assume, but we don't know what it is. We can't control it. I trust that you'll take care of me because I trust in you.
Yeah.
But there's no way for us to make it better. All we can do is sort of acknowledge our abject position and have faith that our faith will be rewarded.
And hope that what that would mean in the end is that you would hope to be gathered to your ancestors in peace.
In peace.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.